The next panel is going to be the exploring emission reduction practices and technologies in the agricultural sector. If you're in the right area, there's two other sessions going on as well too. But if you're here to learn about agriculture, you are in the right place and the emissions associated with it. So we have an amazing panel for this. We have the Louisiana Commissioner of Agriculture, Mr. Mike Strain. We have John Plant from the Chevron Renewable Energy Group, and Roy Hensley, the president of Rising Creek Transportation. So I'll turn it over to the commissioner to go through everything. Commissioner.
Good. Thank you. Man, you're behaving. Normally, when I get up, it said for brief comments, right? How's everybody doing today? Good, good. With me is Todd Parker, my confidential assistant. And as normal, we've been traveling across the state since session has ended. It's always good when legislative session ends, right? That's the good news. But you know what the bad news is? Coming back next year, right? I can say that because I was a legislator for 2 terms. You know, when you're talking about agriculture, today the modern face of agriculture, and agriculture continues to change. And we're talking about bioenergies, alternative energies, clean energies, and what that means. But I'm going to bring you back to around 1910 when they had a fellow made a thing called a Model T. Model T on a farm. What did the farmers use initially? They made their own alcohol, moonshine. That's what they would drive to town, and of course they had to have at least 2 jugs, right? You know, so one for the car and one for them. And then later, when they started dumping light gasoline into the rivers because they had nowhere to go, they started using gasoline. So then the farmers changed. So they put a little bit of their homemade juice in to get to town, buy some gasoline in town, then drive back home with a little extra homemade juice left, right? So that made for an interesting journey all the way back home. But the point is that we have used biofuels. We have used alternative fuels. We've done that since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. And if you look at where we're at today, agriculture now, you know, it's food, fiber, and fuel. Food, fiber, and fuel. And, you know, in my tenure, and I've been in government now since 1999, 25 years, it goes by quickly. You know, I've seen everything from switchgrass to methanol, you know, to all types of biofuels. And when we first started coming out talking about our biofuels, you know, it was corn ethanol. And oh my goodness, you know, there was these people for it, these people against it, these people don't understand. But at the end of the day, now, if you've ever been on a big corn ethanol facility, how many of y'all have been to a farm in the Midwest that makes corn ethanol? Been on the farm? You need to go. So on that farm, they'll raise the corn, they'll bring it in, they'll extract the ethanol, then they will also extract the CO2. They sell an ethanol and CO2. When they harvest the corn, they cut the stalks and they take the DDGs and they grind that up to feed the cattle on the farms that produce the organic waste that becomes the fertilizer. So what comes on the farm is water and some minerals and broodstock, but what leaves the farm is alcohol, right? And beef and fertilizer and CO2. And it's all self-contained, a total system. You know, today, you know, we keep talking more and more and more about biofuels, and it's really leaning towards further development of things from our oil seeds. And oil seeds are incredible. You know, we're maxing out on corn. You know, corn's going to be this year about 88.8 million acres in the United States, the majority of which will be used in bioenergy and feed. Bioenergy and feed. And look, those DDGs are wonderful. And then you've got the competition. Everybody's looking at soybeans. Okay, we got to ramp up soybeans. So every year, everybody's looking to see if we're going to cross 90 million acres with soybeans. And soybeans are such an incredible plant. You see soybeans now, we're really working, one, when we're talking about lowering emissions and becoming more carbon friendly, the more soybeans we can plant as cover crops after our other crops that we have. So in an ideal world, we would plant soybeans as soon as we harvest our sugar cane. Why? Because if we can get that soybean crop, well, that's extra money in the bank, right? And it's a good bio feedstock. But what else do soybeans do? naturally put nitrogen in the ground. And so as we continue to look at how we're going to do this, because, look, there's only about 90 million acres in the United States available for corn and another 90 million available for soybeans. That's about all there is, and we have to find innovative ways. I'm excited to see what's coming down from USDA. When we start looking at the new Farm Bill, as we put incentives, and we talked earlier about some incentives for cover crops. You know, when I'm traveling down the road, you know, most people think I'm looking up at the trees, and I am the Commissioner of Forestry, I'm looking at that too. But I'm looking, what we don't want to see out there is nakedness. No naked soil. So when you harvest a crop, the goal is, as you're harvesting that crop, you're putting another crop in, a cover crop. If we could ever get to 2 croppings, and then you're having the feedstock that we need, because we need feedstock. Yep. That's the challenge. And then we need the incentives to use that feedstock in whatever technology we're doing. You know, I'm excited, you know, the military is talking about running not only aircraft, but ships on soybeans, right? On soybean oil. And that is a tremendous thing for the American farmer. You know, when you talk about energy, if you talk about just energy, and we'll talk about petroleum energy, you think about the hundreds of billions of dollars in investment there, and all the investment it takes to extract that oil. Now I want you to think about that with soybeans. When you look at that soybean farmer, you think about those tractors and those combines. You know, if you think, you know, what's a farm tractor? Just a farm tractor, $350,000, $400,000. What's a harvester cost? $450,000, $500,000. That thing that we use to harvest that sugar cane, $1 million. It's big business. It takes a lot of money. And providing energy is a tremendous source of sustainable income. And the other thing that we in agriculture, you know, we're very proud of what we do to reduce emissions and sequester carbon. The predominant way to naturally sequester carbon and greenhouse gases is by agriculture. Same way with cleaning up the water. You know, we brag in rice, we take in dirty water and turn out clean water. If you think of what we do every day, everything we grow in the ground sequesters carbon. And we keep talking about climate change. How many of y'all read the Wall Street Journal today, this morning? Or last night? Last night would count if you get the early edition. Mm-hmm. I read both. Same thing, but I still read it twice. They're talking about climate change in different parts of the world, how in specific areas it's causing more and more problems that you cannot deny. Whether it's coffee in Vietnam, or olives in Spain, or in other parts of the world. If you look at all those different productions, look what's going on here. It's hotter. Our storms are more intense. You know, we're looking for, I call it plants and bugs, right? Insects and different plants. We're seeing them a latitude further north than they have been in over 100 years. Now, we can argue all day, and you can get into some heck of a political discussions about who, what, where, and why, but the truth is, it is. We have to accept that. So the more that we can do to minimize our impact on this planet is important. And there's so many things. So I'm very excited to be here today. We have some experts here, and I'm going to invite each of them up first to come and introduce themselves, and then we're going to get into some discussion. So John Plant from Chevron Renewable Energy Group. Won't you come up and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit, and then we're going to go right into Roy Hensley. He's president of Rising Creek Transportation. We can hear from them, and then we're going to get some good information.
Sounds good. Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. Well, good afternoon to everyone. We're in that time right after lunch that can start I call it the dead zone. So I worked shift work for a lot of years in the chemical plants. So my biggest I guess learning from that is what's going on with you right now after you ate lunch is your body's using all your moisture in your body to absorb that food, and so you're getting dehydrated, and that's why you're getting tired. So if you have water at your table, start sipping on that, and that will help you if you're starting to get tired, because that's what's going on is you're dehydrating because of lunch. So there's just a little bit of extra insight. Has nothing to do with my presentation today or discussion, but I just know I can see everybody out there. We appreciate each of you sitting in here today. I wish the attendance was higher, but I'm counting that we got quality instead of quantity in our attendance. So thank y'all for attending today. As the commissioner said, my name is John Plant. I work for Chevron Renewable Energy Group. So Chevron about 2 years ago came in and purchased Renewable Energy Group, which is a biodiesel and renewable diesel production company. So we were the nation's largest producer of biodiesel. So Commissioner was talking a little bit about ethanol. That's not our industry. Our industry is biodiesel and renewable diesel. So we're taking some of those same products, that's DDGs that he was talking about, taking those waste products and converting those into a liquid fuel, be it biodiesel or renewable diesel. And we'll get into talking about that in a minute of what the differences are. But we take 70% of our products, feedstocks, are waste products, used cooking oils from McDonald's, Taco Bell, feedlots will use beef tallow, swine tallow, poultry fat. We'll take all of those waste products that used to go to a landfill, and we will take those and convert those into biodiesel or now renewable diesel. So that's done through, biodiesel is done through a process called, word of the day here, transesterification. So pretty much what we're doing is taking a triglyceride, a fatty or a lipid, bringing that in and breaking that molecule using a solvent, and then converting that into a product called methyl ester or biodiesel. That biodiesel can then be blended with regular petroleum diesel to assist in lowering carbon. Full life cycle reductions using biodiesel. We have situations we'll talk about in a minute as well about being able to use B100, which is 100% biodiesel, can lower your full life cycle carbon by about 85%. So when you start comparing that to other technologies, you'll see that that is above and beyond what they're talking about as far as reduction. And then you get into total cost of ownership. If any of you that are here today attended the ACT conference, you heard some major players talking about total cost of ownership. And you can talk and look at the analysis and see that biodiesel and renewable diesel is a fraction of the cost of other technologies. So you don't have to change your infrastructure. You don't have to buy new vehicles. You can continue using your internal combustion engines by running renewable diesel or biodiesel. Renewable diesel, drop-in fuel. If you've got a diesel truck, you start using renewable diesel, you just lowered your carbon emissions by about 85%. If you have an internal combustion engine and renewable diesel is not available, we know the majority, we had this discussion a few minutes ago, the majority gallons of renewable diesel we're producing in Louisiana, just 2 hours up the road or down the road east in Geismar, Louisiana. We've got a renewable diesel production facility that's using used cooking oil, soybean oil, other waste products that we talked about. They're currently producing about 90 million gallons a year. Chevron committed to doing a $1 billion expansion of that production facility, and it's going to be producing we're targeting the end of this year, 270 million gallons of renewable diesel. That's a drop-in replacement for ULSD with the huge carbon reduction. The downside of that is right now all of it's going to California or the Nordics or the West Coast, California, Oregon, and Washington because of the incentives that are available there. And that's where Commissioner was talking about we need to look at incentives for Louisiana to be able to use that product in state and make that circular economy. Produce the soybeans here in Louisiana, produce the renewable diesel, and then run it in vehicles on Louisiana highways and Texas and all the surrounding states as well. But it gives you that circular economy to use the fuel inside the state that has been grown and produced. You get that full circular economy here rather than shipping it across the country. So there's benefits doing that. We're seeing now with the reduction in some of the RIN pricing and the LCFS credits, that product is getting a lot more competitive in pricing now. We're used to paying a premium going to California. We're starting to see that premium coming down, so it's making it a lot more competitive. And you start talking about total cost of ownership and price per ton of carbon, it starts getting very interesting and very competitive real quick. And not having to replace your fleet. We know fleet ages. You know, you can run a truck, a Class 8 vehicle, 20, 30 years, but if you've got a newer fleet or you're returning your trucks over, you don't want to have to necessarily get rid of an internal combustion engine that may be only 4 or 5 years old. This gives you that opportunity to run a fuel in it that's going to give you the carbon reduction while at the same time allowing you to maintain your fleet and not have to buy a new fleet. So definitely some advantages there. With biodiesel in the other parts of the country that renewable diesel may not be available in, we've got biodiesel. So biodiesel, we work with a company called Optimus Technology. They have a vector system. It's a bolt-on system to Class 8 vehicles. You bolt it onto the frame, and what that does is allow vehicles to run 100% biodiesel through their full duty cycle. We've got about, let's see, I think it's about they just exceeded 500 upfits for their product. And we're running 17 trucks right now in Madison, Wisconsin, year-round with no issues. Everybody is probably aware that with biodiesel, there's a concern there about gelling, and as the temperatures get down below freezing. With this Optimus technology, it allows you to run this vehicles year-round. They're running in snow plows. They're pushing snow off the roads in snow plows up in Madison, Wisconsin. So if you can get much more of a difficult situation than that, we'd like to hear it, because that's pretty tough and pretty cold. But they had zero issues running those plow trucks on biodiesel, 100% biodiesel. So start doing that, you're in that 85 to 87% carbon reduction. So you want to make a big impact to your carbon. If you're sitting there and you're saying, how do we get this fleets to get our carbon down? You know, a lot of people are waiting on future technologies. This is available today, so you don't have to wait or have to put the brakes on or come up with this elaborate plan when you can make and take action today. And we could have a whole conversation on, you know, the cumulative effects of carbon. If whatever we put into the atmosphere today, we're not going to get back. It's going to be there for years. And so if we stop it today, we can cut that cumulative effect where we don't continue adding to that carbon by doing something today, rather than saying we have a plan in place, it just doesn't take effect for years. You have the opportunity to do something about it today. So that would be my encouragement, is look at this as an option. We saw the presentation right before talking about ports. We're actively working with ports now to help them lower their carbon, also the railroad and in marine. We're using biodiesel and considering that in brown water, blue water. We're doing trials and pilots right now with tugboat companies running biodiesel in their tugboats up to 30%, and that's going great. It's been going on for about 2 years. And so we see benefits all the way through. Railroad is really taking ownership and adding some biodiesel into their fuel usage and lowering their carbon dramatically today. So I'll stop there. I don't want to hog all the time that we have and allow you to pass on the mic.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much.
You're up. Very good.
Thank you.
All right.
There you go, pictures up there. And now we toggle them.
Yep. Should we do that? Just sit down.
Okay. Hi, I'm Roy Hensley, President of Rising Creek Transportation, very small trucking company in Colorado, focused on ag. I'm also the head of customer validation for Nikola Motor. So you can see the connection here that I kind of had to use the trucks we're trying to sell. And it's been a pretty interesting project, and I'd like to talk to you for a few minutes about it. We started, my wife and I started this in 2022. We live in a very rural area in Colorado, and we're supporting a lot of the agriculture, feedlots, large farm operations. We haul mostly baled hay, 53-foot step decks. We do lumber, other commodities, mostly for backhaul, trying to stay loaded and make some money. In 2023, we had the opportunity to add 3 hydrogen trucks into our fleet. And we had some challenges. The trucks themselves perform pretty well. 500 miles of range, 70 kilogram capacity. They have 200 kilowatt fuel cell, 160 kilowatt of battery. Drivers love them. It does the job well. I think as we go through this, you know, the bigger challenge is the fuel, right? And, you know, you were talking about drop-in replacements and stuff that you can do today with biodiesels. And, you know, we were looking at some of those options for our diesel trucks. But the actual hydrogen, we had an agreement for a supply. We've had a number of challenges with that at the moment. So right now, the trucks are not all in Colorado. We've got a couple of them in Arizona, and the one that I brought here came out of Houston, where we were running that because we had hydrogen supply there. The first load, picture that you saw up there earlier, that was our first delivery. It was the first production truck with a commercial delivery in the state of Colorado using hydrogen. And that was back in November of last year. We started out with a fueler down in Fountain. You can see in the pictures here at Pikes Peak International Raceway. This was a gas supply and a gas compressor unit filling us to 700 bar. With a lot of the prioritization and reallocations of fuelers and some logistical challenges, we've had to make some changes and move fuel around. And that's why the trucks got moved for now. We were trucking fuel in from California, Nevada, Missouri, Georgia. So we look at, you know, from what we've learned on this, what does it take to really make this work? Incentives are a big thing. Hydrogen's expensive. The trucks are expensive. The fuel's expensive. So infrastructure is working with Drive Clean Colorado, Clean Cities. They're doing a lot of work to get the price of the vehicle down. But we also need to incentivize the hydrogen itself. It's just, until it gets to scale, it's cost prohibitive. We want to see it get there. And this, basically, you've got to get more trucks out there to get more demand to justify larger scale projects to mass produce hydrogen and get the cost of it into check. The other challenge is weight exemptions are, in state of Colorado, it works really well. We can run 97,000 pounds on state roads. We can't on the interstate. But most of the ag stuff is out on state roads. We don't have to travel the interstate a lot, so it works pretty well for us. Just to give you kind of a quick overview of the trucks. One Nikola truck avoids 106 metric tons of CO2, or CO per year, yeah, CO2. It takes about 4,900 mature trees 1 year to absorb this CO2 from a diesel truck. And you implement one zero emissions truck enables the replacement of, one heavy duty truck removes or is equivalent to 23 passenger cars coming off the road. So if we put in a hydrogen truck or a zero emissions electric truck, it's equivalent to 23 vehicles coming off the road as far as the emissions, if we're looking at a comparison to cars. So the truck has about 500 miles range. The one thing that everybody looks at them and says, hey, does this really pull a load? What does this do? It's 12,500 foot-pounds of torque. So if you're comparing that to a diesel truck, you're looking at 1,800 to 2,000 foot-pounds of torque. So it has an enormous amount of power. It's instantaneous torque. Drivers love them. They're quiet. Tomorrow, we have the truck out here for a ride and drive. Happy to take anybody for a ride that wants to try it out. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. You know, when we talk about clean fuels, in the same breath, we also have to think about national security. You and I were around, I know you were there when we had no fuel. Do you remember the fuel shortage? You were allowed to get fuel, you probably were too, like every third day, right?
Yeah.
So, and you'd search, now, yeah, that's hard to believe that there was no fuel during the Carter years. And so you would go and try to find somewhere, or maybe you had a buddy who had a gas station, if you had to get to work, or if you had trucks to run. And so we were at, we were at the beck and call of foreign nations, foreign adversaries, right? Could that happen again? Absolutely. When you think about energy, whether we are producing hydrogen, and our buzzword here in Louisiana is blue hydrogen, right, and building our hydrogen plants. When you're talking about fuel, biodiesels and corn, you think about that. We're not going to run out of corn. We're not going to run out of soybeans. We're not going to run out of canola. We're not going to run out of chicken fat and tallow, right? That's incredible, right? But when you think about that, when you have diversification, you have alternative methods, as well as what we have with petrochemicals, to make us to where we have national security. Energy security, food security is national security. And we need to look at all these avenues. What the exciting thing is all the science and innovations. So I kept hearing you say, we're going to figure it out. We're going to get there. How do we get there? And so talk to me about, we'll start off talking about the biofuels and what's going on at Geismar, and when you're going to get to 270 million gallons, and we just love that billion-dollar investment here in Louisiana. Talk to me about your vision for where you're going to get the additional feedstock.
Yep. So part of that is we currently are working in partnership in a joint venture with Bunge. And we're looking at, you kind of mentioned it earlier about understanding and being able to get multiple crops per year. And so we've got a lot of investment and technology and the right people working on it to start looking at winter oilseed production.
That's right.
So that's part of it. As we all know, we're not eating less cheeseburgers from McDonald's or fewer tacos from Taco Bell, so we know used cooking oil generation is going to continue. So that's another source of feedstock for us.
Popeye's chicken too, right?
Popeye's chicken, for sure. So we know those things, as population increases, we know consumption's going to go up. We know cattle prices and cattle slaughters are going up, so we see more beef tallow, swine tallow. We'll see those things, but it's going to come down to a point, you coined the term diversification and understanding what we can use in order to use as a feedstock to produce these fuels. That's where Renewable Energy Group, prior to Chevron taking this over, that was our strength. We were figuring out and are continuing to do so that diversification of what feedstocks and triglycerides and lipids can be used to produce biodiesel and renewable diesel. So that's where our strength lies. Chevron saw that. That's why they purchased us a couple of years ago. And now they're taking that technology and that investment in people and elevating it to the next level to understand what other things we can use. Cover cress, penny cress, you start talking about those cover crops to where not only are you benefiting the soil by putting nitrogen back in the ground, now you've created another crop that can be used for multiple reasons, and it provides another income source for the farmer.
And so, and believe it or not, I was there when you first broke ground at your facility.
Oh, nice.
And we started talking about, we were going to use all this fat was going to be shipped down from Tyson, right? All that chicken fat and pork fat and everything.
Yes, sir.
Where that started. So, but in addition to that, when you talk about, how does agriculture tie into this? So one of the exciting things that we see is that, as you know, here in Louisiana, sometimes we are having weather challenges. And we're a big export state. Over 62, headed to 65% of all the soybeans exported from the United States come down the Mississippi River. But a lot of times we don't have those perfect number ones and number twos. So if you look at soybeans, they're classified number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5. And if we have bad weather conditions, well, our soybeans may be number 3s or number 4s or number 5s. And they have to go downriver. And if you don't have a market for it, because on those contracts for those ships, now what you going to do with it? And so currently, we have to buy number 1s or number 2s, often number 1s, out of the Midwest, bring them in by rail or by barge, or any other way we can get it to kind of blend it out so we can load the ships and they will accept it. But when you have the crushing facilities, right, they don't have to have number 1s. They don't have to have number 2s, right? It doesn't have to look perfect
Right.
to still work perfectly.
The oil is the oil.
The oil is the oil is the oil. And so a few years ago, due to weather, it was called the Great Soybean Crisis. We couldn't sell them. There was no market. It was the same time we got into a tiff with the Chinese, and they said, we don't want your soybeans anyway. And we had a bad year. And we had these beans we couldn't sell. And so when you start looking at what does this mean, in addition to everything else, it's going to make better access for farmers in the Delta to deal with those grains that other countries may not accept, right, because they're not perfect, but they're perfect for us.
Right.
And then you have the residuals. And see, we get all excited about the residuals. So when you take out the oil, guess what? We got some fine soybean meal there, right?
Yep.
Some really good feed products. So, you know, the question I get hit all the time. Well, it's food versus fuel. So you have a choice. You can't burn it and eat it at the same time. But that's not true. It's simply not true.
No.
When we reach production capacity on biofuels, then we're reaching a capacity for the secondary products, the meal and the DDGs, dried distiller grains, that are just wonderful. And we use that into our rations, and it works out just fine.
Yeah.
So there's some added things that we can do there.
Yeah, for sure. And along that same line, I had a thought, but I just lost it. But those are excellent points. The one other thing I was going to touch on is Chevron's goal is to have 100,000 barrels of production a day by 2030
100,000 barrels.
per day.
That's a pretty good, that's a lot of
That's-
fuel.
That's a lot of fuel
It's a lot of fuel.
for renewable feedstock. And I got my thought back that I forgot, so that's good. What I was going to say is Renewable Energy Groups, now Chevron Renewable Energy Group, our motto before was food before fuel. So we were taking that product you were talking about is what do we do with it? It's going to go in now. It's going to be a waste product. It's going to a landfill. We're going to sell it as, slop feed that, that's got to be blended out to even get the nutritional value out of it. Those waste products are now being used to create this fuel. So definitely ties in, and I want to echo your comment about energy security coming back to the United States. That is huge, and that's something we consider and talk about regularly. Is this provides for us to provide our own fuel where we're not relying on other countries to provide our fuel for us. So I want to reemphasize that. That's a very good point in this whole situation.
Good.
Yep.
And on top of that is all the investment we're making in the river systems.
Yep.
Right? Because you ship most of it out by barge, and most of it's going to California or in those regions.
Yeah, a lot of it goes
right?
by rail,
By
but we
rail?
do put some, we do send some by waterway as well. And then we are sending some to the Nordics, which of course is going by water, so.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, my water. And so the investment in the infrastructure we're making here in our own state in rail, specifically in rail and water.
Yep.
We need to do a little bit better with our highways, but we're talking about that, right? We'll get there.
Yeah,
But
coming in
rail,
is rough.
Rail and water, because we're talking about bulk.
We are.
And we're talking about water is the cheapest way to move it. So if you think about a 13 barge tow, you see those coming down the river, that's the same as 200 rail cars. And that's 1,000 trucks.
Yeah.
1,000 plus trucks.
And then if you
know.
put run that barge on biodiesel, and you get a little bit less carbon out of that stack while it's running down the river.
That's right.
You've just affected those communities up and down that waterway.
Right, that's sending
Yep.
you that product.
Exactly.
Well, they can bring that all the way down, unload, and you can fuel them back up and send them back up.
Exactly
Right?
right. Yep.
Excellent, excellent. Let's talk a little bit about hydrogen. Tell me, Roy, where you see the production of hydrogen, because there's a lot of discussion in this state about some of our major manufacturing facilities with blue hydrogen, and touch on, if you can, if you feel comfortable with it, about the aspect of carbon credits, carbon capture, as we're making hydrogen, if that's something that you'd like to talk about.
Yes, I'm not an authority on generation of hydrogen, but I get involved in this quite a bit. We look at the different methods, the SMR, the blue hydrogen stuff, and the carbon capture, and I think that's got to be primary. We hear a lot about green hydrogen, but the cost of green hydrogen is pretty high right now. And I think especially to get to some level of economies of scale, we have to get affordable hydrogen, whether that be blue hydrogen, however we can make that is probably the preference, or gray, Everybody, we sit there with an EV, we don't criticize, did you plug it in from a coal-fired power plant or what? You just plugged it into the grid. But yet we seem to attack hydrogen as to what color it is. But in the end, you've got to get the vehicles out there. And in order to run the vehicles, you have to have affordable hydrogen.
Yes.
So I think all those ways that we can make it in an affordable manner to get the volume up, and then work on, how do we do larger scale, cleaner projects down the road. And there's, even with agriculture, there's people looking at processes from dairies, the manure from dairies and stuff, and making hydrogen out of that, so it ties right back in, like most things end up into the agriculture community of where do we get energy from.
So with your vehicles and your trucks, and you have these that run on renewable energy, and you're a private company, how do you make money? Tell us, what's your secret to your formula?
It's not a secret because I don't make very much money at this. Really, it's all about where it works and where it doesn't. So if you have a commodity like hay, and you put small squares on there, and you have 880 bales on your trailer, and you can get an extra $1 a bale, it comes out to cover your fuel. If you're hauling 3x4s and you get 42 on a trailer, now you've got some problems. And I think we see this even with customers. If you have a business where you're hauling your own product that you're selling to somebody else,
Right.
and you've got a little bit of margin room, you have to do some kind of a price increase or something to help cover this for now. If you're just trucking, that's brutal right now, and that's what we heard at the ACT Expo as well. There's just, it's all about a commodity. It's priced from point A to point B. You can't compete.
So if you're looking at, say, California rules, because I know a lot of trucks with conventional fuels, now they're stopping at the California line, they're offloading in a California truck that comes in that meets the California specifications, whether or not they have to be new trucks or they have to burn renewable fuels. So if you look at what would it take to have your trucks more used throughout, would it take some type of incentive at the distributor level?
Yeah, I think the best way to
fuel.
incentivize it, from my perspective, and I might be a little bit slanted on this, but I feel like we got to incentivize the end user. So there's a number of things that happen. You can give an incentive to buy a vehicle, but the real cost is running the truck. So if you get an incentive to buy it and they say, oh, you've got to run 5,000 miles a year or whatever for your commitment, you're going to run the minimum because it's too expensive to run it. If you incentivize the actual operation of the vehicle or the fuel to run the truck so that it's on par or less, that's when the vehicle's actually going to get used and the vehicle makes a bigger impact.
So you could do it as what we call a fundable tax rebate, which means either on your state income taxes or your federal or both. You could get X amounts of money per mile, and you would put that, you would just log that in as you do everything else on your income
Right.
tax.
So with trucking, we have the interstate fuel tax agreement.
Yeah.
And you're documenting all of your miles by state and by truck and by fuel. And I think that's how you track, what you've run and decide what you can get for incentives. Because that's how we pay the tax. There's 10 states now that unfortunately are taxing hydrogen. So if I fill up in Colorado at zero tax and I cross into Wyoming, now I owe tax for all the miles that I ran in Wyoming for
Road
the hydrogen.
taxes.
Yep.
Yes, that's been a big discussion in our home state when you start looking at, for instance, an EV, electrical vehicle, that you plug into your own home. And so the question is, supposing we get to 30% of our vehicles are EVs that you charge at home, and in our state, the highway taxes are what pays for highway maintenance. So there's a lot of discussion about that. I'm in charge, believe it or not. I am now in charge in testing and checking all of the electric vehicle chargers that are commercially used, right? Just to make sure that whatever you're being charged is what you're getting. Just like, well, I'll check all the gas stations and everything else. I don't know, Todd, do we do any hydrogen stations? I don't think I have the equipment to that, not yet, right? We do everything except propane there. But there's been some discussion about road taxes, highway taxes, and all, and that's a continual mix. There's not been any fees levied by the legislature, because they understand the positive aspects. But from hydrogen, tell us what you see, when looking at your crystal ball, where you're going to be in 5 years.
I think as this matures, I see, like just in Colorado and the people that we interface with there, I see many more stations coming online. I see the price coming down significantly on hydrogen, both the vehicle side and the fuel. I don't think there's any one solution here that is the solution for anybody. I think there's going to be electric where electric works, where in trucking, if you can take the weight hit for the electric vehicle and you don't need a lot of range,
Right.
you'll use that for the longer distance stuff. I see hydrogen growing. I think it's going to start out with local return to base. But as soon as we can get somebody on board, we'd love to see like a Love's Truck Stop or somebody like that come along, and that will open up corridors, and that's when it'll really start to take off.
So
It's very functional. It's just expensive, and it's hard to get fuel.
Okay. So we need more of our truck stops as they build more to have the availability of that fuel.
Yes, sir.
Yes, I guess if you get outside of your range and there's no hydrogen, then I guess you can get a delivery truck to come bring you some, but that would be a challenge.
Yeah, and it's not that easy.
No, sir, I
You know,
wouldn't.
it's compressed, it's chilled, it's not just pull up and fill it up.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, thank you. And we do have some hydrogen facilities down in Geismar, Air Products and others, in our industrial corridor. And I think we're going to see more and more of that.